and welcome to my channel. My name's Carl and I make aviation and travel related vlogs. Come along as we fly from Paris to Toulouse on board Air France's domestic business class. Let's go travelling with Carl. I started my journey in Barcelona early today and was connecting at Paris-Charles de Gaulle airport. I'll review that flight in another blog. To start the blog, let's talk about Air France's domestic business class. Air France introduced business class on domestic routes in January 2020, just before the pandemic gripped the world. The aim was to provide a seamless connection in business class to long-haul destinations from the regions of France. With travel now open again, I'm flying on board an Airbus A320 from Paris to Toulouse to try that domestic business class product. Thanks to the beauty that is the Schengen zone, I didn't need to clear customs or immigration when entering France. Paris-Charles de Gaulle airport is massive and the taxi from the runway to the gate took quite a while. I'd landed into Terminal 2F, which worked well to connect to my domestic flight to Toulouse. It's pretty easy to get around airside and the terminal is well labelled. I made my way direct to the Air France lounge to grab something to eat and relax during a relatively short connection of only 2 hours. Opening its doors in August 2021, the new Air France lounge serves within the Schengen area, including domestic flights within France. Although I have no SkyTeam status, I was able to access the lounge while flying business class. Excessive. Sometimes the price difference between economy and business class within Europe is small enough to make the upgrade to business class worthwhile. This was particularly true for one-way tickets, which are notoriously expensive within Europe. There's also a strange liquid-free hand sanitizing machine just before you enter the lounge. There are hosts to greet passengers as you arrive into the lounge, although entry itself is using self-service gates after scanning your boarding pass. The lounge is spread across 2 levels with a signature staircase linking the 2 levels. I did find the spacing of the steps quite unique, making it feel very strange when walking up these short step staircase to the upper level. For aviation geeks, the view from the staircase across the apron is impressive. The views over the tarmac also lets in a heap of light into the lounge, which makes it feel bright and airy. Both upstairs and downstairs have seating areas, and both areas were very busy when I visited. There is food and drink available everywhere through mini service stations throughout the lounge. As one would expect in France, there were staff offering champagne to guests throughout the lounge. While the food offerings were well spread out across the lounge, I found the offerings themselves to be a little underwhelming. We are in France after all, you expect fine food. However, you've just arrived from a long-haul flight, there's a sleep zone available to get some shut-eye between flights. Also present is a spa area, although all the appointments are booked out for the duration of my visit. It's quite impressive to see this level of service in a lounge that services predominantly short-haul services. That said, it's a busy lounge and despite the bright windows looking out onto the tarmac, I didn't find the lounge overly relaxing. Outside of the lounge, the gate areas are very open and bright, with a hangar-like feeling to each departures area. Each of the departures areas are connected by a long tube connector with a very retro industrial concrete feel. While the gate areas are open, I found them quite crowded and warm. The waiting areas for each gate merge into each other, creating quite a hectic feeling prior to boarding. Arriving at the gate a few minutes before boarding commenced, I was greeted with a large crowd of people trying to squeeze into a tight gate space. There are separate lanes for SkyTeam Priority and Business Class, but they're really short lanes, so the lanes just merge into each other. It's followed by zones for economy passengers. The close proximity to each other and the other gates made a bit of a crush to get to the boarding door itself. Once on the air bridge, things seemed to calm down and move pretty smoothly, and I was soon taking my seat in row 1. Business class cabin is flexible in the A320 series aircraft, with the curtain divider moving up and down the cabin based on the need. The first 2 rows were dedicated to business class for this flight, and the remainder were allocated to economy. Air France described the onboard business class seat as, and I quote, "On board, get comfortable in a spacious seat designed exclusively for your comfort." In reality, the Euro business seats are really just economy class seats, with the middle seat blocked. Some airlines, like BA, who also use this Euro business product, place a table in the middle seat, making it look like they've made an effort, but on Air France, the middle seat is just left empty. The only differentiation between the classes is a curtain between the cabin and solid red instead of red and white headrests. This makes for an expectedly underwhelming hard product. There are only 2 passengers flying business class in this flight to Toulouse. In a strange quirk of seating allocation, both of us were seated next to each other in an otherwise sparse cabin. The lady beside me asked to move, and after some hesitation, the crew member allowed her to move to the empty row of seats across the aisle. Seating in row 1 gave me more knee room, although without the space under the seat in front of you available to stretch your leg, the actual leg room feels about the same as the row behind. The tray table is in the armrest, which I don't mind as you can fold it in half to make a small cocktail table instead of the full width table. Row 1 is probably the most comfortable seat in the plane and is also served first by the crew when cabin service commences. We pushed back and taxied and made our way to line up on runway 26 right and made a quick departure out of Charles de Gaulle. On the climb had a great overhead view of Paris-Charles de Gaulle from the left hand side of the aircraft. Yes, I've probably pronounced that incorrectly. Le Bourget's 3 runways host the annual Paris Air Show as well as corporate aviation flights. We then made a left-hand turn above Versailles, which would have been visible through the clouds if I had been sitting on the other side of the plane, and then headed in a straight line down the length of France. Due to the thick cloud cover, there was no views other than a sea of white for the majority of this crossing of the French countryside. It was only as we began our descent into Toulouse that the cloud lifted and the views of the patchwork countryside appeared. Air France provide in-flight Wi-Fi on board with packages available for streaming or just messaging. I decided against shelling out more euros for the ability to get online on this flight. To assist in differentiating the product from economy, it would be nice if they gave business class passengers a voucher for free access. Alas, this wasn't the case, so I spent the flight instead listening to tunes and drinking away that free-flowing champagne. As I mentioned earlier, the domestic business class product is a relatively new addition to the Air France offering, if we discount those pesky pandemic years. The product is aimed to allow international passengers to connect and fly business class for their entire journey. The execution of the product, however, leaves a lot to be desired. Other than lots of champagne being offered, the meal service could really only be described as a couple of small snacks. There was a cheese-filled biscuit and some almonds and bread snacks, as well as a drink service. This was rather disappointing given there's no real difference in hard product when compared to economy. The purser was, however, lovely and ensured my glass was always full. Although, if I'm being pedantic, which I am, the glass was not glass and was instead a disposable plastic cup. Despite having perhaps had too much for this short flight, other than the champagne, there was no difference to economy. The crew member was great and gave me a sick bag filled with all the samples of all the snack boxes they had to take with me after the flight. While this was a nice gesture, I don't feel it made up for the poor food offerings on board. I made up for the lack of a decent seat or meal by enjoying a decent portion of the Chicard brought mosaic champagne that was served on this flight. A bottle of it retails for about $75 and it was a nice drop. As we began our approach into Toulouse, the cloud cover lifted to reveal a patchwork of green and straw fields below. The countryside around Toulouse looked beautiful, with little villages breaking up the somewhat manicured looking landscape. Toulouse is one of Airbus' manufacturing sites, so as an aviation geek, I was keen to see the factory on approach. Landing onto runway 14 right and sitting on the left of the aircraft meant I missed seeing the delivery line, but saw some at the hangars and the terminal as we landed. Once on the ground, it was a short taxi to the gate where I was first off the aircraft. So what did I think of this flight? While I had the seat next to me vacant and I got through a large amount of champagne, I'm not sure that would warrant me buying this product if it wasn't part of a connection. The lack of any food of substance on board, or really anything other than champagne, that made it feel very hard to feel like you're in business class. It feels very much like an economy product. I can see why Air France would want to offer domestic business class connections. It's just very unfortunate that other than the name, the product doesn't have any hallmarks of business class to it. Not the seat, and not the food, not even complimentary Wi-Fi. The only real benefit was the lounge access before the flight, which I do consider made me feel less bad about spending the money to upgrade. If you had a connecting flight from long haul to this flight, you'd definitely feel like you've been downgraded to economy. While I was glad to give it a go, I wouldn't rush back to spending the extra euros to fly domestic class within France again. Unless of course the price difference is less than about a bottle of champagne, because that's all I got out of it. Currently the price differential in the domestic only segment is around 200 euros, meaning I wouldn't recommend this product for just a domestic flight. I began the long walk through several baggage halls where bags just started coming out as I arrived. The terminal is connected to the city by both trams and express bus service. I opted for the express bus, and about 25 minutes later I was in the centre of Toulouse, snacking away on my goodie bag from the flight. I hope you've enjoyed this review, and thanks for travelling with Carl.